nice seeing you, Rupak.
Say that again?
Say nice seeing you.
You too, mate.
I hope I don't sound too thick with my accent.
No, I'm getting used to it. Nice t-shirt, by the way.
Yeah. Jag. You can see I'm a thorough Jag fan, eh?
I mean, when you added me and I looked on your Facebook and I'm like, this guy's a real Jag guy.
Yeah, I'm through and through.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, it is, eh? But it's so good to have somebody like you on here. I've also sort of done my own research, and you've got such a wealth of knowledge, it seems. Really, and it's always nice to have those kind of people on your podcast and everything. You can share so much information. So that's why when you came to me, you said, you talk a lot. I'm like, that doesn't matter.
Okay. Cool.
So let's get down to it.
Okay.
Welcome to the show. So let's just open up with who is Rupak, and why are you here on this show?
Well, one thing, I mean, I'm a complete car nut. I was, even when I was like 5 years old. Yeah. And people in the, you're going to lose it as you get older, and it's never happened. I've always been a car nut. I drove my family nuts. My dad was not a car nut. I grew up in London, North London, and you can imagine you live in a tiny house, no garage, and I'd always buy these shit piles and bring them home, so I've always been a car nut. I went the engineering route. I did mechanical engineering. That's me as an engineer and a car nut. Yeah. Other aspects of me is I'm a bit nomadic, so I got this big RV, and I love America, driving around and exploring. What else? I'm into science fiction, and first and foremost, I'm an engineer. I'm an engineer's engineer. Yeah. I'm always thinking about engineering, all kinds of cars. I'm looking at a Honda, or I'm hearing a straight six, thinking that's a high third order engine note. I'm really weird.
But aren't all car nuts? Shouldn't all car nuts be like that?
I think so. I hope so. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm also I get like that sometimes, where I get too technical sometimes, and I lose people.
Well, I enjoy reading your social media thing because it's rare, Yeah.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
Sure.
So how did you get involved with Jaguar?
So I'm going to be totally honest here.
Yeah.
In England, I wouldn't say I was a proper Jag. Before I started, I wasn't a proper Jag guy. I was really, really into old school 80s BMWs. I like Alfa Romeos. And then my exposure to Jag was, there was a show called Minder, which I don't think it was shown in South Africa.
No,
it was a London show. And Arthur Daly had a Jag, and I always thought it was a pretty car. And my dad was like, no, they drink a lot of fuel, they're not. And my dad was like, no, he's a frugal guy. But I respected them. And then when I got the job at Jag after my master's, I couldn't believe it. And Jag had just released this V8, which was a stonking engine, just being released. And then I got into Jag, and I was involved in that V8 and the upgrade. And I think when I was at Jag, I was younger. I did respect them. I liked them a lot. I wasn't as much into them as I am now.
Yes. Okay.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I was at Jag for 10 years. A Jag, when I was there, they'd changed because Ford had taken over, and they had really pushed the quality aspect.
Yeah.
This isn't to be underestimated. I think creativity on Alfa Romeos and Jags is different, but when it comes to quality, it's kind of laborious, and you need process, and it's not fun, but it's needed.
Yes,
That's what Ford gave us.
Yeah.
Yes.
And people don't know how actually reliable that 4.2 engine is. I mean, that V8 is super reliable if it's looked after.
It is a really good engine, and I'll say this because I don't know what it's like in South Africa, but in America, a lot of the car enthusiasts here, they're kind of like, there's an engine called the Buick 3.8, and they worship it. It's pushrod, cast iron head, and block. My friend was involved in that, and it's really primitive, and it runs and runs and runs. And they have these blanket generalizations about Jags from the old days, and they cling on to it saying, "Oh, Jack, you need a Chevy engine," and it's like it's not true, you know.
Yes.
So, 4.2 is a great engine.
It is. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I mean, down here, you know, people look at me and say, "Why did you on earth buy a Jag?" You know, because they say, but all the history shows these things don't last, and then you show them things online of the quality from other people who've owned these Jags and going,
yeah,
look at this. Here it is. There's Jags. I mean, even on that one X350 group, there are guys with Jags over 400,000 kilometers, and the cars are going.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The 4 point. I mean, I have a 308.
Yeah.
I was more involved in your 350.
Yes.
I just came across a good deal. The 4.0 has chain tensioner problems,
yes.
but you know you can go in there and sort it out, and it's a good engine.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, I agree with you. And actually, if you think about the 308 was something of a marvel when it came out back then as well. I mean, there was nothing that could compete against it really effectively. Even the European marks didn't really. You know, the time the X350 came out, that's when the Europeans were sort of coming in. But before that X308 was something else.
Well, so I like it because it's a bridge from old to new. It's got its lineage from the Lions era, old school low roofline Jag.
Yes.
It's got the old classic suspension, and it rides really well. But it's got a modern. That engine is brilliant. I talked a bit about the engine. We benchmarked a lot of engines. We benchmarked the M60 and M62 BMW 4.4 V8.
Yeah.
Benchmarked a load of them. The Mercedes M119 we benchmarked, and it's got a good breathing head, a nice fast burn, and the big advantage is the friction is very low, even compared to the old N96 and the V12, and it burns really well. And the big challenge was we wanted to do. I don't know if you know the AJ26. The number 26 comes from 12 plus 6 plus 8. Because we were going to do a modular range of engines with a V6, 60-degree V6, a V12, and a V8. Then we got into it with Ford, as you can imagine, and we're lucky because we got the V8 because Ford wanted to put the Mustang engine in. So we're lucky we got the 26, and we had to do a supercharged version, and there had to be a refined version to replace the V12, and that was the big challenge. I think the big challenge to make the engine. It's never going to be as refined as a V12, but getting there. You know, we put a lot of effort.
Yeah, and I mean, you can feel it. I mean, me being an owner of an XJR, I mean, that refinement is there. It is a bit. I mean, when you see an engine idle and you open up the bonnet and you see it idle, it just sits there and it's straight. It's almost like those V12 E-type engines and stuff where you see it and you can literally put something on top of it and it won't vibrate off. You know.
Yeah. Right. So idle. I'm gonna nerd out on you on this.
Yes.
The Jag, the first car where usually you have the throttle body and it controls the idle speed.
Yes.
But that takes too long. So the Jag had a pattern, and I'm sure everyone else does it now. They use the ignition. They use the ignition per cylinder to control the idle speed. So there's an accelerometer, and it measures how the instantaneous acceleration of the crank. It correlates to a cylinder, says that cylinder's making too much power, let's pull back the ignition, and it does that so many times a second to get the idle absolutely super smooth.
Yeah, amazing.
And it uses the throttle as well.
Okay, that's amazing, eh?
I'm sure most modern cars have that now too, but back then in the 90s that was revolutionary. Yeah, you know?
and I was reading it. They were going to try a 5-valve setup on the heads, but then they decided to go to the 4-valve setup. I can't remember the reasoning.
Right. So we had how you use a single. You have a single cylinder engine, and you measure everything on this engine. You measure cylinder pressure, you measure burn rates and everything, and you can try little tiny mini heads. You can try 5 valves, you can try 4 valves, and we tried 5-valve, 4-valve, and the 5-valve was. And I wasn't involved in this. I heard this. I read the reports.
Yes.
The 5-valve valve for the friction and all the packaging, you don't get that much benefit.
Okay.
So let's go back.
Yes.
When you look at a 4-valve versus a 2-valve, like the old XK.
Yes.
The biggest benefit of a 4-valve, you're cramming in valve area for a small cylinder. Everyone just thinks it's valve area. Well, you can just go really big bore in a 2-valve and go massive valves. It's the valve area for a compact chamber. That's what, for a compact cylinder. And 5-valve doesn't really give you that much. I know Audi have made a big deal about it, but if you look at the Audi data, we've tested them, it doesn't really give you that much.
Okay, yeah. And
so 4-valve is
Yeah. So
Yeah.
So what were some of the obstacles? I mean, obviously, it's actually quite interesting you were saying about the Ford V8 possibly being used. How did you guys combat that from them not using a Ford V8?
So we had a really chief engineer called Dave Rupak, and he was politically. So big corporate companies are about politics.
Yeah.
He was technically reasonable, but he was politically very good. He would go to Detroit a lot, and he would talk, and he'd influence them. And I think it was just a lot of it's political, and then showing good data.
Okay.
Ford got some tremendous labs. They understand stuff like you wouldn't believe. They have some tremendous facilities.
Yes. And what were some?
So there was.
Carry on.
No, you go ahead.
So what were some of the obstacles that you guys had to overcome with the V8?
So one of them was, so I mentioned the refinement challenge, and then on the supercharged engine versus the V12. If you look at your engine under the bonnet, actually not your one. If you look at the old X308 like mine, where the intake comes around the back, or you look at the XK, you'll see this resonator. You'll see one bent one and you see one straight one. One of those is to tackle idle speed noise, and the other one is to tackle booms, and the other one is to tackle whine. So we do stuff like that. On your Jag, there's this duct, and it looks like a cobra snake. It goes down the middle. If you take the engine cover off, that duct pants. It would pant. And in the development, in the prototype cars, it would kind of pant, in and out like a, we ribbed it up, made it really, really stiff. So those kind of little detail things we do to make the engine more refined. What other challenges? Oh, there was, in the 80s before my time, there was old school Jaguar guys, and they didn't like V8s. They were very much a V8 is an American animal. A British car is always a V12 and an inline-six. And you read some of the reports from that time, technical reports, and they're very much, well, V8s have refinement problems. And then Lexus comes out with their LS400, and it's clearly not true, And I think people changed, So there was some stuff we had to deal with there. The other challenge on the 308 was it has double wishbones at the front, which really is quite intrude. Yeah. And because of that, the exhaust manifold on the 308 is pretty constrained.
Yeah.
It would have been nice.
Yeah. Even the X350, I feel it's quite small. I mean, if you think of just making branches for the engine, if you had to go like to the route of doing custom branches, it's literally on your driver's side where the steering rack comes out, and where the extra steering column comes out. It's almost impossible to try and get around there to do branches.
That is right, and it's probably worse than the right-hand drive car. So it's probably worse than the 350. It is, because of the way the air suspension and things intrude.
Yes.
I've had engines on the dyno with like proper headers.
Yes.
On the naturally aspirated version of your car, the normal one, it's not headers, but they have the logs are split. We split the pulses. We didn't do that on the 308, and that's to gain low-speed torque. We tried that on the supercharged engine, and the supercharged engine needs so much flow, it wasn't worth it. So we just made it into a log. So the Aston, now I was involved in the Aston Martin V8. That's basically a Jag engine with different heads and cams and stuff. Yeah. We put headers on that, and on the actual car, they've really compromised. They are headers, but they're not proper headers.
Yeah, I have seen my friend's got one like yours. And I've seen pictures of his. I haven't actually seen his in real life because he's up in Joburg, so it's quite far distance. But the pictures from what I saw they're sort of like compromised headers.
So the reason it's compromised is because on a modern car, the catalytic converters have to be very close.
Yeah.
You do that because you want the heat to light them up very quickly, and there's a contradiction. If you move them back to get the headers, you won't meet emissions. So you're fighting this whole compromise,
Yeah, and I think that's the key. That's the biggest pain is this whole emissions thing, trying to meet all the emission regulations. It must drive an engineer. It must drive an engineer crazy because you bought this great engine, and now you get told, listen, you got to like totally like reduce the power or.
No, you're exactly right. It's nice as a performance guy to have some a bit of length for the exhaust manifolds and a bit of space, and you don't usually get that, so it's a pain. It really is.
Yeah.
But,
what was some of this? Did you guys ever test when you guys were bench testing these engines? What sort of powers were you guys getting outside of the car?
You mean at the rear wheels, or you mean on the dyno?
On the actual engine dynos, yeah, on the engine dynos themselves.
I don't remember now. I think a good rule of thumb is 20. So at the flywheel, say it's making 290 or whatever, or say 400. A good rule of thumb is 20% loss.
Yes, obviously.
Because it's an automatic. Yeah, I can't remember what numbers exactly. Yeah. I'm trying to remember now. Yeah, I would say 20% loss. The biggest challenge with your car and my car, the XJR, is heat soak.
Yes,
it's got an intercooler radiator. Yeah, I don't know if you've seen my pictures. I've got a bigger radiator installed.
Yeah, I've put a bigger radiator in my car as well.
Yeah, that really would help, because on mine it was commonized with the XK. I don't know what on yours what it was commonized with, but bigger is not bad. The pump, the actual supercharger intercooler pump, you can upgrade those now. So
I've got a Bosch. I've got a Bosch one.
Right, yeah. So that's another huge benefit. Yeah. So there's some challenges on the supercharge. When the temps go up, the engine retards the ignition and you lose a shitload of power, as you can imagine.
Yeah, you do. And that's what I've also done is I've actually removed the back. I don't drive it in the rain, so it doesn't bother me. But I've removed the back bonnet rubber.
Yeah.
And that you can actually see the heat escaping.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, you can actually see the heat escape out there. So it shows you how much. I think I'm more technical. I'm like you. I'm technical. So when somebody tells me, when somebody says do that, I don't just do that. I try and test to make sure it's actually workable.
And that's the way to do it. You measure it. You measure what you're doing, right?
Yeah. So I went there with thermometers and everything underneath the bonnet to make sure there's less heat. It's actually really that beneficial. But yeah, it really was actually a big difference. It was just, I think if I remember correctly, just on like 20% different in terms of heat underneath the bonnet.
Right, I can believe that. I can believe that. There's a company here that rigs your air conditioning to the intercoolers.
I've heard of it. Yes.
The problem is I go to a drag strip here and they're very much don't put the aircon on because it makes all the water go on the track, and they're really adamant about that. So. Okay.
Have you done that to your car then?
Not yet, because I've thought about it. I've gone to the drag strip lots, but they're really adamant about the aircon and not having it on when you're on the drag strip. Yes.
What currently are you busy with at the moment? What's your job at the moment?
I'm basically head of R&D at an automotive place. I've done I'm involved in lots of stuff. It's maybe not as interesting. I mean, the most interesting stuff I've done was the Aston, the Jag, the Indian motorcycle, and some big truck. I was involved in big truck engines. Now it's more, as you can imagine, electrification, autonomous driving, top-up hybrid engines, small engines. And I'm now basically I'm a VP. I'm a high up guy, so I'm over a team. So my job's more political now, but it's R&D stuff, research and development stuff.
So it's sort of like what you kind of did previously at Jag as well, to a degree, right? I mean,
to a degree, but I was more hands-on. I was more really into it, and now I'm kind of more. I've done powertrain. I've been involved in vehicle dynamics, less so at Jag. I know a bit about vehicle dynamics and vehicle stuff, and now it's more high-level stuff, to be honest.
Okay.
I sold out.
I sold out.
I'm still technical. I'll always be technical. I'm a nerd,
Yes, and I'm sure you seem like a guy likes to have his hands sort of in the mix as well.
So I don't talk down to anyone. All my guys love me because I'm on a level. I'm talking to them and I'm talking a mile a minute,
What are some of the most memorable, like going back to the Jag engine, what are some of the most, or say most advantage, like compared to your competitors? I mean, you look across at the time, I think the only real competitors at the time was probably BMW and Mercedes to a large extent. Audi still were a little bit behind in the run. What are the advantages of the Jag V8 over those other two, or if there was any advantages to them?
So I'm the big advocate of the valve train. The valve train is direct acting. The friction The friction is very low. Now at low RPMs, rollers, like on the Fords, are slightly lower, but at high RPM, the valve mass, the valve system mass, system being valve, spring, bucket, is so low that the inertia is low, and you rev it. It's really good for revving. Yeah. And everyone always says, what about wear? They don't wear. If you change your oil regularly, you can do over 100,000 miles, and their wear is negligible. So then we started thinking, what's the point of hydraulic? You look at the BMW, and it's a hydraulic tappet.
Yes, I read it.
Yeah, the friction is higher. And when you design the cam profile, when you design the flank accelerations on the cam, you can't push it as hard because it's hydraulic, whereas the direct acting is rigid, and you can really push it, and that gives you a much nicer, cam profile for airflow. Yeah. So that's one. The engine friction is pretty low, I think. The bearing size, especially in yours, your Conrad bearings are smaller than the 4 litre. So if you look at the bearing size, it's a pretty low friction engine compared to BMW and Mercedes. It's rigid. It's a closed deck, and the 5 litre isn't this way. The 4.2 and the 4 litre, take the heads off, it's a closed deck, which means it's very rigid. It's a nice rigid block, and then it's got a bed plate. So some Americans call it a split crankcase.
Yes, I understand.
The whole bed plate. Yeah, whereas the BMW is main caps. Now, there's different schools of thought, but I like bed plates. I think they're nice and stiff. Stiff is good for MVH, harshness and stuff.
And I think also for low-end torque, I would think it's very advantageous, right? Am I right in thinking that way?
I don't know if that low-end torque's more really about the exhaust manifold design that we're talking about. The exhaust manifold lengths, that with the VVT really gives you low-speed torque.
Yeah. I'm a torque man, so I love low-end torque in a V8 more than high-end.
If you didn't care about emissions, you would do headers with VVT and a natural aspirated engine to get the low-speed torque. Supercharged engine's a whole different kettle of fish. Exhaust tuning doesn't have that much effect, only a little bit,
So you don't gain much. You don't gain much out of it.
Not with exhaust tuning. No, not as much.
Okay, is that partly due to the VVT as well, or is it to do with the supercharger?
I think the supercharger dominates everything. It dominates everything, and everything else is small fry.
Okay.
So if you gain, it's like it's not worth it. You might as well just put a different pulley ratio and do better cooling and stuff. You might as well focus on that.
Yeah. I mean, I've been focusing on the cooling at the moment on mine, just to improve improving the consistency of the power delivery.
Yeah, I went on when I first went to drag strip. I've never been before. I got a dreadful time. I got like 14.5 seconds, quarter. It was 38 degrees C, and it was getting hotter and hotter. The tanks were getting hotter, and I was getting worse and worse times, and it was all to do with cooling.
Yeah. And how bad is that heat soak on that engine? When we're talking bad, and I know it's bad, but what are the sort of the consequences of that heat soak on the actual engine itself?
It's not going to damage the engine. I mean, the ignition system retards the timing, so it's not going to go into knock.
Okay, so no one has to worry. You don't have to worry about running bearings or anything like that with it running so much heat.
No. Honestly, no. The only thing is the oil, the supercharger oil, is a limit. I can't remember the temperature limit because we take them on the tracks in Nardo, and there was a limit. We'd measure it, and that oil, you can change it. It degrades. I think it was 130 degrees or 150. I can't remember now. There's a limit for that. But in real everyday use, I don't think you're going to be running flat out like that unless you're in Germany.
Yes.
So you'll never. Drag strip's something different, but in real everyday use, transiently you'll push it, you'll punch it, you'll get the torque, and it's fine. And then you back off because you're into the next hedge or you're into the next truck or something. So it's not a big deal. No. What I love about the Roots blow up, what I really love about it is it bypasses. So when you're pootling around 60, 70 miles per hour even, it's bypassing.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. So everyone talks about 70 horsepower loss on the supercharger. It's dreadful. It's only 70 horsepower at full load at 400 horsepower. You're very rarely driving at that. If you're in traffic, even at 70 miles per hour, my car is like 37 horsepower. It costs 37 horsepower to drive at 70 miles. It's very little. So it's bypass. So it's very good economic. It's an economical solution. When you bypass it, the losses are like an alternator. They're very low.
Yeah.
So
there's no real need to be worried about all of that then.
No, honestly, it's fine.
Yeah.
You know,
and I mean,
just do your regular change.
Yeah. And I mean, obviously from this X308 to the X350, I mean, there's a big weight difference as well. So, I mean, it's a very, I mean, I'm actually surprised how light they managed to get the X350. Considering
we would get those cars on the lift, and all of us would brainstorm and say, you know, the car was near completion, and we'd say, what can we do? What can we do to reduce weight? And we went over it, and I remember going under a 350. I looked at the anti-roll bars or anti-sway bars, and they're frigging hollow. Everything was done. There was nothing else you could do. And then the other thing is, your car is 60% more torsionally rigid than a 308.
Yes.
You know, it's irrationally, it's a much better car. I was going to get a 350. I have more involvement in it. They tested the 350 on the Nürburgring. My car wasn't tested on the Nürburgring.
Okay.
The S-Type was. My car wasn't, because it was a different era. You know,
yes,
the 308. Your one was it's a superior. It's a much better car. But I like the 308 as well.
I like both of them. I mean, I wouldn't mind having both. I'll be honest. You know, just because of the one being such a stepping stone for Jag in terms of that V8, just dominating the competition at the time. You know, it was something new. I mean, and also everyone at the time was also looking towards turbocharging. And here comes Jag with a supercharged engine, you know, which is basically a blunt hammer. I mean, it's really a hammer compared to a turbo, which is more technical and.
Yeah, I agree. It seems that way, and then when you get into, because in one of my jobs, not a Jag, one of the guys who worked for me, very German, very correct. This is in America. He was like, supercharger is terrible. He was giving the whole supercharger loss argument, and then I talked about the whole bypass, and then he didn't know what to say. So on first acquaintance, it seems like when you get into it, especially with the new supercharger, the TVS, the one on the 5.0, they are so efficient, man. They're amazing.
Yeah, they are. They're actually very amazing, those. But I still like the Eaton.
The roots blower.
Yeah, the roots blower. I probably even prefer it to a degree. I've actually seen with the 5-litre one that supercharger seems to have a lot more problems than.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen guys have almost like a rattling noise in the superchargers. But I think they can also be down to people not maintaining them properly. You know, doing your regular oil changes and stuff as well. I think this is the thing that. And I'm sure you saw one of my posts the other day where I say don't confuse reliability with maintenance. Some guys will say,
I tagged someone on it. A young lady I know. I don't know if she's going to listen to this because she's always giving me crap about your 350. She saw a picture of a 350 and she goes, "You just need to rip the engine out and put a Chevy engine." And the worst thing is she wasn't trying to wind me up. She meant it. Yeah. And then I had a right go at her, and that's why I tagged her.
Because down here in South Africa, I mean, first thing you do when your Jag engine picks up, whether it's the XK6 engine or the V8, is you tuck it out, you put a Lexus V8 or a Chevy 350 in it. And
same as here. Same as here.
You know, and I'm sure there's some cost benefits to it, but ultimately that Jag engine isn't too much more to run than those other engines if you know what you're doing. For us, I've done some sums and stuff to try and, you know, because you hear people come at you with all these arguments. I like I said, technical, so I go and I add up, yes, it costs this and X and this, but it's not really that much difference at the end of the day, you know.
I agree. I've got a lot of cars. I have a Cadillac Escalade, the biggest. I don't want to start slagging off other cars, and I'm sure some of them are okay, but my Escalade's been the worst car I've ever owned. It's got this much worshipped LS engine, you know, the LS Chevy engine. It has oil leaks. The idle speed is really rough, and maybe because I'm from Jag, I'm so sensitive. Maybe someone else wouldn't notice. The idle speed is rough. When you start it in the morning, there's lots of piston slap. Again, because I'm from Jag, I notice these things. Other people probably don't, but it's a Cadillac. Why is a Cadillac like this? You know?
Yeah, no.
You know, and they put that engine in the Jag. I mean, like, what the hell? So
yeah, I mean, there was a video the other day with a Chinese guy and he's got an X308 like yours, and he's just recently bought himself a Porsche Cayenne, 3 months old, something like that. Now he's had the title of the YouTube thing is which is more reliable, and you kind of like say, well, you've had the Jag for longer, so maybe the Porsche will be more reliable. And yet when he talks, he says, I've had this X308 now for 2 years or a year and a half or something, and it's giving me no troubles whatsoever. And now this new Porsche Cayenne of his, 2 months, and it's giving him all kinds of trouble. The transmission is making noises, and he's like...
I look after my cars. I've got a lift. I go on under it. I think I'm going to keep my 308 forever. I don't take it in the snow and salt. I don't know if you have snow over there.
Yeah, we have snow, but we don't have the salt like in the UK. I mean, my X350, if you put it onto a hoist and you look underneath it looks brand spanking new.
You were so lucky. Mine isn't bad because all my cars live in a barn. I have an X-Type for the winter, and that takes all the crap, you know.
Yes.
But I keep my car very nice, so you know.
Yeah, I'm the same. I don't drive it in bad weather or through wet and things like that. And I think that's also why. And then the previous owner was similar nature as me. So it's a good example.
Yeah, I will put the miles on. I don't care about. I'll put the miles on, but when anything goes, I'll just rebuild it. Even if it costs too much, I don't care. I'll rebuild everything myself.
Yeah,
I'll just keep driving it and then rebuild.
Well, at least you got that ability to do that. Unfortunately, I'm at the mercy of Jag. I wish I.
Problem.
Yeah. But it's been they can charge a fortune. But fortunately, I found the guys here. They're trying to help me out a lot with the vehicle as well because they also got a passion for it. It's the only one in my city. There isn't another one like it, and. That just feels such a privilege to work on this thing because there were so few that were imported into our country already. I think they said about 30 or so that were imported into our country. So there wasn't many that were bought. So you don't see them on the roads ever.
What's your fuel like octane and quality of fuel?
We're 95.
And is that measured the European way or the American way? No.
I think it's European, more measured to the European weight. We don't have they don't have the we don't have 93 and the real low octanes I see in UK. I don't know how they measure what the difference is.
Okay, so the European way is called RON, and then the American way is RON plus 1 over 2.
Yeah, we're
so
right.
93 in America is like 99 in Europe, and 80 91 over here is like 95 in Europe. So if you're the European way, I guess, it's just RON.
Yes, it's RON.
Yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know that, just to be, So.
Yeah. No, it seems to run fine in our petrol. I didn't feel there's certain brands of petrol that in our country, we got a company called Sasso, which basically supplies everybody with fuel. But But then we have like Shell, Caltex, all those guys, but then they put their additives. They add like sort of their own sort of additive or something like that to it.
Yeah. I think the engine was designed for 98 octane European measure.
Yes.
But if you don't if you don't go on the autobahn, hopefully you won't. The 4 litre had cast pistons. Yes. The 4.2 is forged pistons, which are a lot better.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure it'll be all right. I mean, my car's sitting at 198,000 k's already.
That's nothing.
To me, it's running in. We actually, you know what we did? We opened up the tappet covers because I wanted to, when I bought the car, I wanted to just make sure that everything was fine. So I redid the supercharger, did the pipings and stuff like that. And I opened up to just see what the valve train was, and it looked basically brand spanking new in there, which
wow.
Yeah, it didn't look like it was like what I'm used to normally seeing of a car that's 197,000 kilometers. Most cars have their engines redone before that.
That's nice. That's really cool. That's really, really cool.
So
how far? I mean, on the highway, can you go fast or not really?
No, you're limited to speeds of 120 kilometers an hour, which is about 80 miles an hour, I think.
You'll be fine then. I'm worried about knock. knock usually happens at really high speed. You know, like in Germany, high load, high speed. If you're doing 80 miles per hour, you're probably using 40 horsepower, and then you put your foot down, you might go up 50 for a second, and then then you're into the next traffic light junction. So I think you should be fine with any luck. Don't quote me on that.
No, I won't. I mean, obviously with it lasting as long as that, I'm sure it's fine with the fuels and that.
So
for us. And I'm sure also what they normally do as well, I'm sure that, we got homologation, also our own homologation testing and stuff like that. I'm sure they would have done some sort of, before bringing it in here, to make sure it actually can survive without lasting.
I hope so. I hope so. A lot of it depends on the ambient temp as well. I mean, if it's, I don't know how hot it gets over there.
Well, it does get hot. I mean, we kind of like, I suppose, 30, we can get up to close to 40 degrees in our country, and even a little bit above that, which is, I don't know what Fahrenheit that is. But we can get hot. I'm living by the coast, so we get that cool air always blowing over anyway. So
that way.
Yeah, so you're talking 24, 25 degrees maybe.
Okay.
On average.
And then it sounds nuts, but humidity actually helps knock. Humidity actually helps. Dry is probably the worst for knock, like Arizona or something.
Okay, so humidity. You're saying humidity is worse for knock?
Humidity helps. It actually helps knock. It's
better. Okay.
Is it humid? Is it humid where you're at?
Not always. We can get humid, but not always. Humidity is higher up. I don't know if you've ever heard of the city called Durban.
Yeah, I've heard.
Yeah, Durban, that side, they got intense humidity there. Like, and you walk out and you.
It sounds like South Carolina.
So they get that, But
Yeah. Cool.
I mean, but the most important thing I'm doing is I'm trying to also, I don't just park the car, I use it quite a lot, because I'm on the philosophy of a car that you drive is a car that lasts rather than a car that stands,
I agree. They're designed to be driven.
Yeah, I'm not scared of I'm not scared of miles or kilometers. When I know a lot of people will say, well, why don't you buy a low mileage car? I'm one of those guys that say I'd rather buy a high mileage car.
Yeah, if it's looked after, right?
Yeah, exactly. If it's been well maintained.
I'm the same as. Yeah.
I'm
a bit sacrilegious. I've modified my Jag a bit. I've done things that I think Jag should have done to mine, like the rear end on the V12. Excuse me. The rear end was bigger on the V12 than the X308.
Yeah.
I ended up putting a V12 rear end, and it doesn't have the 308 never had an LSD, and I put an LSD in there, and that cost me a lot of money. But I'm that kind of nut. I'm trying to make it how I'm not modifying it in a kind of cheap way, but how Jaguar I would have done it if I had more clout back then.
And I think there's also on the X350. That's one of the sort of I won't say weak points of it, but it doesn't have an LSD, so it's got all this power. So when you want to try and put it down, it just if the ground is uneven or slightly worn, it just doesn't have any grip.
So when I was a Jaguar, it really annoyed me. They made that decision. They said that, well, you've got traction control, and it's not the same thing.
No.
It's like, you need both. And then, to be fair to Jaguar, at the time, everyone was doing that. BMW were doing that. All of the other manufacturers are saying, now it's gone full circle.
Yeah.
Jaguar have got LSDs, and, so I'm hard on Jaguar because it's like your family, something you're hard on your family compared to everyone else. But to be fair, other manufacturers were the same at the time as well. A lot of them,
But it would have made that car, that in a manual gearbox on that car would have made that thing a killer.
So in Europe, there's a diesel in the S-Type, and I believe the bolt pattern will fit the V8. And I was thinking of putting that diesel gearbox, the 6-speed, into my Jag. There's a mapping and all this, the modules and shit. But mine has got the 5-speed Mercedes box, which is a really strong box. And I'm like, okay, I'm not gonna bin that Mercedes box. So I'm keeping it automatic. But I know what you're saying,
From the start, if they sold it from the start, that would have been. I reckon that would have been iconic even today. In today's time, it would have been a collectible of note. That thing.
Right. So the 6-cylinder, there was a 6-speed, 5-speed, 6 at the age of 16. They had a 5-speed of that, didn't they?
Yes. I would have loved that.
No, I know. Honestly, I really thought about it, but now I'm like, okay, I'm going to keep the Mercedes box. So I've done a lot to the Benz box. I put AMG, shift solenoid, it shifts really fast. I'm just going to stick it out with it.
Yeah. I just actually had mine upgraded, and the seals upgraded and everything. It was leaking some oil, so I just thought, we got ZF that are in Cape Town. So I just sent the box. Yeah. I sent the box straight to them, and while I was there, they came back to us saying, listen, some of these seals are old school. If you're not going, can we upgrade your box for you? Right. So they went ahead and did it. I think similar to the Audi parts or some, was it Audi or BM? I can't remember, but they used different parts in it just to make it better and more reliable and everything like that.
That's really good. If you change the transmission fluid and flush it regularly from the start, and then do your oil changes, I think Jags are amazing. They'll just keep going.
Yeah, I'm a big fluid changer, so I've done the diff and all of that as well.
Yeah, it's really cool. So I might get S350 one day. We'll see. I might get it one day, but I've got way too many cars right now. I've got so many cars, and I've got old 80s Benzes and 80s BMWs, and I've got like 4 Jags. It's terrible.
But that what happens when you're a car enthusiast, eh?
It does. In America, I don't know what South Africa's like, but you have a lot of space here. In England, you have no space. So is South Africa like America? Do you have a lot of space there?
Yeah, we have lots of space. Yeah.
So, in England, no one's got any space. So your car's at your friend's house, and the other one's at your grandma's house. It's just dreadful.
Yeah, I mean. It's quite funny when you see the UK guys and the troubles they have with their cars. Whether it's to do with where to park it or just even suspension problems and rust problems, and we literally don't have that. I'm like,
I know, and they're so paranoid. Like they'll advise, the UK guys will advise someone from Arizona, oh my God, worry about rust, or Californian guys worry about rust, and I said just ignore it. You don't have to even think about rust in California. My car's from California,
Yeah, well, it's the same kind of things, And you sit there as a new buyer coming in, and you just bought this car, and you think, what have I just done?
You cause panic with these guys. And then also in England, like in London, they used to have speed humps. Yes. Like they call them sleeping policemen.
Yeah, we have some of them here as well. Some of our.
That wrecks your bushes, man. I really that. They don't have that in America, so I'm really happy.
I hate those things. We've got a few of them around here. Not as many as we used to have. I think they've sort of like banned them after warrant guys. Lots of guys were breaking suspension and stuff on them. So it's a terrible thing. We also had these like.
What was happening in London? The ambulances were going over them, and then the ambulances had patients, and the patients were frigging dying and stuff. And that's what it took for them to remove them. It's just dreadful.
It is. And we also used to have these what they call rumble strips. So these like almost like pebble type things across. And I mean, people.
I know those.
Those things are horrible too. There you go.
So what we have in the Midwest is we have such bad roads because the temperature goes from probably as hot as you guys, maybe get to 38, and it gets like minus 20 something in the winter. And can you imagine the road surface? Imagine doing a road that has to compensate. So what happens is the roads just get big holes. Yeah. And I went through a rim. I was driving my XJ and it just wrecked a rim once.
Yeah, we get it as well. We get lots of potholes here. And I mean, it's just... And then you get guys with the 20 inches and the 21-inch rims, and you just think to yourself...
Oh, man. You're a masochist, man.
Yeah.
That's what I say.
I took off my 20-inch rims and I put 19-inch on. It's so much better ride, everything anyway,
So there was an XJR 100 that was wrecked. It was like the collector's one.
Yes,
and
I remember that.
He was selling the bits. I got all the bits. I got the wheels. And they're 19s, and I thought, I'm not putting these 19s on my Jag because the roads are so bad over there. So I'm 18s.
Are you 18s, eh?
I'm 18s. I got the asteroids.
Yes, nice, eh?
Yeah, I got them. I changed the colour, made them slightly darker. You know.
Yeah. What colour is your X308?
It's black. It's like an anthracite black metallic.
Okay, so it's the same as mine then. My
Probably, yeah.
Yeah, my X350 is, I think, it's anthracite black or something like that.
Yeah, and then I went for a titanium colour on the wheels. If I'm honest, the wheels are probably a bit too dark. And then I found some brakes. I found some 4-pot brakes. Yeah. The Brembos. They were an option. I'm trying to retrofit them onto my Jag now. Okay. But I'm stripping it. It's a winter project. I'm stripping it down.
But didn't they have problems with those Brembos?
There's a slight noise, like a slight vibration noise. Most performance guys don't care, but a typical Jaguar driver doesn't like that. Yeah. So we were worried about that, so we just didn't do it as standard.
It's like the supercharger when they put that big cover over it and stuff to try and dampen the sound. Good customers are moaning about the supercharger sound.
No, exactly. And then the weird thing is we did a survey per country and we found that Germans like the supercharger whine, but other countries didn't. Isn't that weird?
Yeah, but I like them.
So for some reason...
I love the whine. I'm like... I mean, when I took that rear rubber out the back of my my bonnet, that noise that comes, yes, hear it now. I mean, it sounds like those big what's those superchargers, like American super. I don't think of the supercharger's name now.
Oh, the big the hot rodders, the hot rod ones.
Yeah, that loud whistle as it comes through the bonnet. I mean, it's just.
Well, if you like it, that's cool. On your car, actually. Because it's aluminium, it's not as we put a lot of effort because the engine is quiet, but the aluminium is not as good to make it as refined. Yeah. So we put so much effort into trying to get the noise levels down. It was really hard. There's double bulkheads. If you look under your bonnet, there's double bulkheads. Yeah. We put so much effort into trying to get the noise down. You know, just in general.
Yeah,
because steel is much easier.
Yeah, you can see it when you sort of like watch or go through the car. You can see that there's been lots of effort taken to keep the car quiet. I mean, particularly inside the cabin. I mean, the cabin can be dead silent, almost. You know, with the windows up and that. You know, it's quite something. You know?
So what? Do you have an opinion on the late? I mean, I call our Jags the Lawson era Jag. I really respect Jeff Lawson, the guy who started it. He died in '99. Do you have an opinion on the X351s and the later ones?
Well,
250.
I like them. I mean, driven in. I actually had an XF as a almost like a rental car while my Jag was at Jag, and it doesn't compare. I'll be honest. Particularly the XF to my Jag. In ride and something of the ride has been lost from the crossover. I can't really speak on the XJRs or the XJ variants as such, but if I just talk from perspective-wise, what I've seen and heard of, if I were to say to somebody, I'll say rather spend money and buy yourself an X358 or an X308 and look after that rather than going to buy a newer XJ or XF.
So you're right. Looks are subjective. I don't personally. I like the looks of ours. I'm not into the looks. They're not bad, but to me, it's not a Jag. But they're good cars. But the stiffness, you're very perceptive. That was intentional because Jag are now going after the BMW crowd and stuff.
Yes.
And I know someone else complained about it on a forum with an XF, and he found that the S-type suspension actually all the springs and shocks fitted straight onto the XF. The early ones are basically an S-type with a different body.
Yes.
So a lot
I've heard of that.
Yeah. He went softer and he was really happy, but that was intentional because they're trying to go after the BMW crowd. So it's interesting, isn't it?
It is, yeah. So I mean, actually, I mean, obviously, the XJR was fitted with the sport suspension setup on the X350, the S suspension, but the sport ones, and it is actually remarkably quite stiff on the road. I do find that with it actually on some surfaces it actually feels unsettled, personal feeling. On a flash surface, I mean, the thing sticks, but when it gets a bit of, it's almost like the CAT system takes too long to sort of respond, or I don't know if the CAT system maybe taking too long to respond. I mean, this is just me talking from an educated point of view.
Yeah. So I found the air suspension, there was like this stiction, a bit of stiction, like you're saying, a bit slow to respond.
Yes.
And it seemed, the low speed rides seemed a bit stiffer than my XJ.
Yeah.
I found that, you know. I'm sure it's intentional, but I don't know. I'm yeah. Go ahead.
I almost believe it's almost if it at low speeds that it doesn't feel as certain with itself as it does feel when it's at high speed. It almost feels like the car comes into being when it's going at high speed, but at low speeds it's like it's confused. There's my.
I'd agree with that. I agree with that because I've driven both cars back to back, and I found the X350 at low speeds is a bit kind of not as composed as an X308.
Yeah, it's not as composed, and I find it actually rather than going over a bump, it almost smashes a bump. You know, like it's just responding to the suspension responding too slowly to what it's feeling, you know, what's coming up against almost. It's that kind of sort of scenario. And maybe it can be age, maybe. I don't know, my car, it can also be that the car's now 12 years old.
It could be, but I mean, I remember driving the prototypes back to back, and I concur. I found the same thing, to be honest. You know, and I wasn't a ride and handling guy, but I'm pretty sure it was intentional because probably they had so much on their plate because the 308 at high speeds isn't the most stable car, whereas your car at high speeds is a stable car.
Yeah, I mean, I can take my hands. You know, I like doing the hands-free test just to see how true and straight a car is. And I mean,
I'm not going to try that. I'm not going to try that on my car.
no, not for long, not idiotically long, but just to, you know, and the car is pretty true. I mean, even braking, you know, I can take my hands off the steering wheel and brake, and there's no pulling. Or it's such a well composed car in terms of that. I just find that from a suspension point of view, that it's almost, I don't know if it's too hard, the suspension. I mean, I haven't driven a Jag with the comfort suspension to compare the two, but I found the sport suspension one is actually quite. I mean, you feel that, you know, like when you go over, you actually. There's this thing, I don't know what you call it, but it's almost you feel the aluminium going in the car. You know? Right. I go like this. I literally go. You know, like is my car like Constantine? You know, it's going up. But that's low speed. But once you pick up speed, it seems to come into being. But at low speed.
I agree. The 350 to me is the epitome of a Jag. It looks classic. It's thoroughly modern. Its dynamics are really, really good. I prefer it to the 358 even. I think the 350 to me, I'm an old school guy. I think it looks lovely. It handles well. Yeah. But I guess I don't need the space, and I got this amazing deal with the 308, and I put so much money into it now. I'm not going to change, you know?
Well, I'm not going to change my car now as well. I mean, just from the aspect that I'm money I put it into it, I'm not going to sell it. I'm so, as I said to my wife, I'm ruined for life now with this car.
So my one, I put an LSD. I was looking into how easy it is to put an LSD on yours, and it's really convoluted, man. It's not easy to put an LSD. It shares some aspects to the Ford rear end, the Ford 8.8, but it's not exactly the same. And it would involve a lot because you'd have to get shafts made and stuff on yours to put an LSD. Yeah. You know? Yeah, it's a shame, really.
No, it is. But, you know, but there are guys on the forum that have put the LSDs and stuff in there.
Oh, have they? Okay.
Yes. Yeah, there are guys running. So I think Quay for something actually makes an LSD, but you're talking mad money, you know, when you well, particularly from my side, when you convert it.
I've done that on my Jag. I spent shitloads, and I actually got special shafts, half shafts designed, and changed the spline count. And honestly, you don't even want to know it. I mean, I think I paid less for the car than I paid on the rear end.
Well, I went through a similar exercise with the throttle body because my throttle body was finished. When I didn't know when I bought the car, but when I came down, I drove 1,000 k's with the car, and when I arrived here, it was leaking and things like that. So, and then I went to Jag, and Jag said no, they don't longer supply the throttle body.
Oh.
So I actually got one made up, and
oh wow.
So I got a custom throttle body on my car, and it took 4 months to work out and get it to run all nicely with the setup. There's so much. There's more than just making a throttle body.
Of course.
You know, so it's slightly bigger, not much bigger, but it's slightly bigger opening to it. But yeah, it cost a fortune.
I couldn't believe it.
You know,
but what I did on my... Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Well, the throttle body is designed... the big compromise is they keep it small. Small is better for the idle speed, but big is better for lower restriction. So you as an engineer, you're caught between this whole... I want to keep it small because I want a super smooth idle, because we use that in the ignition to keep the idle smooth. And then, but then if you make it too small for high end, you have so much loss across it. You can lose 10, 20 horsepower.
Yeah.
So on my one, I think it's 75 mil. I went to 82 millimeters. I got it bored out. The advantage you have is Cameron, this guy in Australia, and some other guys have hacked into the ECU, and you can get into the ECU.
Yes.
Yours is a 32-bit, I think. Mine, no one has cracked my ECU.
No one has on yours. Yeah.
Yeah, and now I get this city engine mill light. So I'm trying to find someone that can get into the ECU because it's got too much airflow idle.
Okay.
On mine, because I've gone for a bigger throttle.
And would it like a conversion to Haltech ECU possibly help?
It could, but the problem is, even my car, and it's not as complicated as yours. My car's got a module for the instrument pack, a module for this body, a module for everything, and trying to get those things to talk. I mean, it's a nightmare, you know. And then the transmission is a module, doesn't it?
Yes.
You know, the only thing I thought of is there's a guy who does Chevy conversions over here, and he's got the GM ECUs to talk to the Chevy. I don't want the Chevy engine. I wouldn't mind getting all this, you know, because he's got all the instruments and everything working. So I wouldn't mind saying, keep your Chevy engine, but can I have all the ECU shit? And you know, but I tried to talk to him, and when he found out I didn't want to put a Chevy engine, he was so insulted he pretty much hung up on me. So.
No way.
But I wanted to use his ECU tech because he's managed to crack it, you know.
Yeah.
So I should have lied. I should have lied to him.
I think even the pre-2006 non-VVT X350s had trouble with their ECUs. You can't get into them. I think it's only the ones like from 2006 onwards, like that the VVT, where you can actually sort of my ECU's mapped. By the way, yeah. So
that's nice.
But it had to be mapped because of the throttle body, the new throttle body. So we had to try and get everything. But like I said, it was a 4-month ordeal.
What year is your car?
2007.
Okay, that's a nice car. That's really nice.
That's what they sort of the factory number X356.
Okay. Just before the 358.
Yeah, it's kind of like lots of the 358 technology, if you want to call it, was in the X356, and then they just put bumpers on when it X358.
Yeah, pretty much. The ECU on yours, I was involved in the mapping, the original. It went to a 32-bit torque-based. It's called PAN-PAG. It went to a special torque-based. It was common with Land Rover, and I was involved in some of the mapping. Not on the supercharged, on the V8 and the V6. Yeah. You know, I think I know a bit about that. Yeah.
And is there any? I mean, obviously, I've got the coolers, the supercharger coolers with the fins on them. What are the difference between those ones and the ones that predate that? The smooth bodies. What's actually the real difference?
So when you talk about the fins you're talking about the outside.
Yeah, the cooling fins on the outside of it. Is that all that it just did? Is put some cooling fins to help with the heat soak, or
it's a bit heat soak, but it's actually stiffness as well.
Because
that code is mainly stiffness because of this whole whining, high frequency whining they were trying to get rid of.
Okay.
So, you know.
Okay, I thought it might be something. There might be something more to it.
Yeah, cooling, I think the impact is minimal. It has some, but it's mainly the whole trying to get the thing stiff for the noise stuff. You know.
And what sort of lifespan are they on those superchargers?
Honestly, they go for a long time, man. Geez. To be honest, when they get caked with carbon, they actually perform a bit better. I'm not bullshitting you. Okay. The carbon, they actually seal better. I mean, not much, but 1 or 2%. You may get 1 or 2% better with
Yeah.
carbon. But when they go, it's the bearings that go, and then the oil should be changed. But they seal really well.
Yeah, I mean, I'm saying I'm closer to 200,000 kilometers, which is what, 122,000 miles.
It's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing.
And it sounds good, but I just was wondering, like, how much longer, you do wonder sometimes, how much longer do I have on these things,
I'm trying to think. I mean, I'm in my head. I'm looking at some of the dyno. I'm trying to remember some of the dyno data, and what I'm thinking about the boost levels. I can't remember. I've seen engines do so many, and it's hours on the dyno. It's not miles. Engines in so many hours. I can't remember seeing the boost level go down, but I'm sure it does. It must. You'd think it does, right?
Yeah.
But I guess you'll feel it. Maybe your engine will get worn out before I don't know.
Yeah.
So.
Now, the first thing I did when I bought also the engine was I did a compression check through as well.
Yeah.
Which is kind of thing I do with any car I buy. Really, I'm a real compression check tells you everything about you really want to know about the engine for myself.
I agree. What did you find? Was it good?
Yeah, no, it's still within factory specification. So
my Jag was a Nickesil. Originally, my car was a Nickesil car.
Yes.
And the previous owner, I think the engine, the sulfur and the fuel wrecked the engine, and he got a new engine put in with liners, and it had the new chain tensioners. So my engine is a lot newer than the actual car.
Okay.
So
Yes.
I have 3 or 4 Jag engines lying around in my barn. One of them is an Aston engine. So if I ever build an engine, I'm going to probably use the Aston Martin heads. The Aston Martin heads are really good.
Yes, they are. I've read up on that. Yes.
Yeah, they're really good heads. So I put a lot of work into those on the Aston heads. So.
Yeah. And what's the real big what's the real big difference between the two? I mean, obviously there was some influence. I mean, there was some help from Cosworth with the heads on the 4.2.
Actually, that's not right.
Is it? Okay.
All of the heads use a Cosworth casting process. The
Okay.
process they use to cast is Cosworth. We didn't use Cosworth as a consultancy because Cosworth do engineering consultancy, or they used to. They're not called Cosworth anymore, but they used to. Now they're called Marla, but they used to do consultancy work. But they also do this casting process, which is bloody amazing. And your heads and my heads have that. For your heads, we used an Austrian consultancy. If you look, it's got a metal lower manifold. It was going to have a flap. And it was going to try and push swirl. I didn't think this was the right solution, and in the end, they got rid of the flap. The heads are okay; they're not bad. We ended up hastily modifying them last minute, but and we got rid of the flap, so it's no longer swirl based. It's tumble, but it's okay. I wouldn't have done it, especially what I've learned now since then. And on the Aston, we didn't do it that way. We just went for a nice tumble port. So your heads aren't bad, but we spend a lot of money with this consultancy for not much gain. I'll be honest.
That's a pity when you yes. But at least now you've broken a myth there about I mean, even like Wikipedia and stuff. It talks about the heads being made by Cosworth. So that does.
They're Cosworth casting, but they're not. The engineering was done by Jaguar, and then on your one, you'll see that the ports are asymmetric, and it's because this Austrian consultancy really. I don't know if I should be saying this. They really messed things up, to be honest, and we ended up salvaging it, and it was okay. But it is what it is. Yeah,
I mean it's a great engine still. I mean,
it doesn't matter when you drive it. It doesn't mean anything bad about the engine.
No, nothing. But I've heard about the Aston Martin heads being a lot better.
Yeah, I've got those, and then I'm thinking of getting the AJ27 heads and actually making them like an Aston. I've learned so much about intake ports since then. If I had the time, I could probably do ports that are better than the Aston. So if I've got like loads of heads lying around. I wouldn't one day, if I had some time, I wouldn't mind making some really trick heads. But
No, 'cause I'm sure there's a lot of more power gains to be had out of the engine.
Maybe we found on a supercharger when you port the heads, it doesn't give that much, like 4 or 5 horsepower. Natural aspect, it's different.
It's interesting. So the supercharger really dominates then.
It dominates everything. It's like a big bull that just pushes everything through. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah. So the only real advantage would be then. I mean, obviously, like I've mapped mine. So would have to go to a twin screw or something like that to really make any benefits out of the engine. Or
So you can do twin screw, but what I prefer, the TVS blowers are amazing. The TVS, I mean, make no mistake, they're related to our engine. The M112, the next generation is the TVS 1900. It's an evolution. The 1900 and 2300 are amazing. Would
it work on our engine? The TVS?
Yeah, I think so. So a 1900 would fit easily. I want to fit a 2300. The bolt pattern's a bit different. It's going to cost a lot, as you can imagine, but I wouldn't mind fitting a 2300 on there.
Yeah, I mean, it is. I mean, if you're looking at twin screw, even, I mean, you're looking at a load of money.
It's probably going to be similar, but the problem I have with this twin screw is when you can't bypass a twin screw. So on our engine, to get really nerdy on you, the supercharger doesn't do any internal compression work. It supplies a volume. It doesn't do any internal compression work. And that's why you bypass it. And when you bypass it, there's very minimal fuel economy loss. On a twin screw, you do internal compression work, and you can't bypass it, so you have a huge fuel economy hit. And if you look at the efficiency numbers, a twin screw isn't better than a TVS.
Interesting.
The TVS is as good as ours for bypass, but you have the efficiency. So what's the point of a twin screw?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I really want to do a twin screw, but not a twin screw. I mean a TVS, but I'm going to find one.
Yeah.
So
that's the plan. Yeah, it's interesting, and it's so nice chatting to you. I mean, these are the kind of chats that I enjoy, and I seriously, I could carry on speaking to you forever on these things. I mean,
I enjoy it too because I'm lonely. I can't talk about it in where I am now because it's all management and leadership and electric cars, and I think GM are now starting. They don't call them cars; they call them mobility solutions, whatever that means. So
that's like sort of like the latest word amongst a whole lot of manufacturers is mobility solutions now. It's no longer a vehicle. You got a mobility solution.
Yeah, whatever. I'm going to keep my XJ. You can do whatever you want, man. So I enjoy talking about this too. There's a guy that's retired from Jaguar, and I'll talk to him about things, and I think he enjoys getting technical with me too. So.
Okay, that's nice. Yeah, it's so nice to have be able to talk technical as well. I mean, obviously, I'm a lone soldier down in my town when it comes to Jag, because everybody else is looking at you. The first question you always get is, why did you spend money buying a Jag? You're going to end up having oil on your driveway, and all those conversations.
Something from some hangover from the 60s, some preconception.
Yeah.
So what's the car scene out there like? I mean, are they into? I don't know what the cars are like there in South Africa. Is there a Jag following? Is it golf?
There's a Jag following, but I wouldn't say it's like out there. You go out and say yes, there is this Jag following, but there are a lot of Jags on the road, and there are people who collect them. And I belong to a classic car club here in my own town, so you get to see the odd old one come out. There's not many in the club, but our country is like Volkswagen country, JDM type country. It's like, because where we're living. Obviously the JDM, we're nearer to Japan. So we get a lot of that kind of vehicles in our country. But definitely, I mean, we are a car nut freak country. So you get your supercars and you get your American muscle and all that. But Jag, I mean, like I said, I'm the only one in this town who has an X350 XJR. There is no other one.
So I knew South Africa was a car nut place because when I was a kid, I used to read all the magazines, and we got a car called the Ford Sierra, and you guys put some fucking huge V8 in there or something, and then the Alpha. I used to like the Alpha GTV6.
Yes.
We got a 2.5, and then you guys put a 3-liter, so I knew that it was a country of enthusiasts.
Yeah, no, we do a lot of that. We even imported a little. They call it a thing called a Husky Materia, and little 1.5 naturally aspirated real mom shopping cart, and we put a turbo onto that, and sold it to the public. So that's the kind of country we like. The Australians, we like it loud, fast.
So Australia has these regulations. What are the regulations like?
And
regulate?
What regulations?
It's like America.
Yeah,
I remember. I think BMW did. I think there was like you guys had some special BMWs, like you put the
Yes.
M engine in the 7 Series and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, and we had a thing called a 333i.
I remember that.
You
I
know,
remember that.
so we've got a history of that kind of culture. You know, we are a mad car country. It's actually a great. I almost call it an island for car enthusiasts because we don't have the legislation, not even like California or any of those kind of places. And no MOTs and stuff like that. So you would road with your car once, you license it every year, but it's not like it has to go through rigorous checking all the time. So I can modify like I can modify this Jag, and I don't have to take every time. Now next year I've got to be careful. Wait a minute, I've got an MOT. I've got to remove this and this and that. You know, there's nothing like that, and there's no policing of any real restrictions anyway. You know, in our country.
It's the same here. To be honest, in America it depends. California is bad, but not as bad as England. Where I'm at, it's fine. I'm in Wisconsin. It's not a big deal, so it's really cool.
Yeah, so it's cool. So there's also drag racing, there's also circuit racing. Yeah, it's like I said, it's a real mecca. If you're really into cars, it's a mecca to sort of come to as a car enthusiast. A car enthusiast should retire in South Africa because he can take any car, modify it, and it's not going to be pulled over for being illegal.
That's really cool.
So, you know, but they are starting slowly to sort of clamp down. I mean, obviously, they're starting to see, wait a minute, they can't catch guys with their very powerful engines, they need foster cop cars or whatever, you know. But yeah,
right.
But we are far more relaxed, particularly with the road regulations and stuff, with modifications and things like that, you know.
That's really cool. I love that. America, I think it depends. Arizona's pretty good. Texas is good. Where I'm at is good. The biggest problem here is the winters, but apart from that, everything's really cool.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a friend who 2 years ago he had a Mark 1 Escort.
Yeah.
But he fitted in the front. It had BMW 740i suspension.
In an Escort.
In an Escort, it had two what do you call brake fluid
reservoirs
underneath each fender. Then on the rear back, obviously it had the Jag suspension from a Series 1.
Yeah.
And as a motor, it had a 350 Boss, 351 Windsor V8, Ford V8, with a Paxton supercharger. The ones that I normally use, like in the BMs and stuff. The look always looks like a turbo rather than the normal. So yeah, that fit. It was 750 kilowatts, which is so just like 1,000 horsepower. Yeah.
Was it fully caged? Was the car fully caged?
Everything was double seam welded, so the whole car was separated and re-welded together. New firewall was welded into it because it had the I think it's the AOD gearbox, the AO box in it. It was also modified to take the power. And then obviously it was braced back, front, inside. But everything else was also again like seam welded. In fact, the guy who did the body was a aerospace guy. So what he did was he put those aerospace pop rivets.
Yeah. Jesus.
On it.
That sounds amazing.
It was a proper job. It wasn't one of these jobs where guys said, okay, I'm going to try a thing. It was properly thought out. The engine set in properly. When the car took off, it wasn't a car that went all over the show because of all the power. It tracked well.
Wow.
Everything. It was quite a monster. I think it did 5.5 seconds to 100 miles an hour.
Holy crap! Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it was an amazing car, you know. So that's the extent of our enthusiasm in this country. We do stuff like that, crazy. And that car got licensed. That car got licensed for the road, you know. And no one said anything or questioned anything about it getting it licensed. So yeah. That's the nice thing of
So
living
over
here.
here, we have that here. The English are also enthusiasts. The problem in England is there's no space, disposable income is quite low, and then the regulations.
Yeah.
Whereas over here, disposable income is quite, because it's cheap to live, income is relatively high, and there's less regulations. One of the guys who works for me has a what a Toyota Prius is?
Yes. Those things you burn outside. Those things you burn outside in your garbage disposal.
Yeah. Well, he's done something better. He's ripped out the powertrain. He's put a Cummins diesel. The Cummins, the Dodge Ram.
That seems to be quite popular over there. Eh? The Cummins diesel. Guys like them.
The Cummins diesel engine and made it rear-wheel drive, and it looks like stock. It's so funny. So that's the kind of stuff we have over here.
That thing will pull a tree out.
Yes. I have a Dodge Ram. I have a Cummins Dodge Ram. It's a great truck. It really is.
But those are really strong engines too. Eh? That's one strong diesel engine.
I'm mapping mine, and I've reinforced the transmission, because transmission is the first thing to go.
Yeah.
So I've reinforced the transmission.
No, that's a king of an engine. That.
It's a great truck. Do you get them over there?
No.
Is it too big?
I think it's too big for us. We don't have the big. When you're talking ute or trucks, we get the Japanese variants.
Toyotas.
The Toyotas, the Suzus, the Ford Hilux. Things like that. Majority wise, we don't get the big Tantra type stuff that you guys.
It sounds like Australia. It sounds a bit like Australia there, then, doesn't it?
It is very similar to Australia. It's big Ford country as well. So that guys, especially on the west. Funny enough, it's strange, but on the west coast, the guys are Ford nuts. Yeah. So anything, like you go problem with your whatever car, shove a Ford into it in that sort of area,
That's really cool. That's very cool.
Yeah, but
cool.
I mean, listen, I don't want to keep you too much, and we've been talking for almost an hour and a half now. I'm
trying to think. Anything I miss? Did I miss anything?
Yeah, we've actually gone off track.
I'm sure.
Let me go through here quickly. Go to the bottom here. Okay, so this is a question I do want to ask you. How have you taken the knowledge of your past and applied it to your current job?
Actually, that's a good one. So, one of the things I'm very fond of is the sound quality. Now, I'm not a pure sound quality MVH guy, but I had some input at Jaguar on some of the getting. When I say sound quality, I don't mean getting rid of booms. I mean getting the right signature noise.
Yes.
And a lot of that was especially on the Aston and your car as well, because in your car, it was, we had to make it quiet, but it had to be the right noise. You don't want high frequency noise. You want exhaust and intake noise. And I had a lot of experience on that. And the way people perceive noise, there's different perceptions. Some engines can sound luxurious, whatever that means. Some engines can sound sporty. Believe it or not, there's certain orders in the frequency map which will encourage that, like a sporty noise is definitely a science. So when I was involved in the Indian Thunderstroke engine, you can imagine a bike. The noise is absolutely critical. Yeah. And at the time when I was working there at the beginning, they were kind of doing it by just trial and error and microphones and let's try this. And I introduced a whole scientific approach. I used some of the people that I was involved in when I was at Jag to introduce, some of the MVH sound quality techniques. There's things like when the exhaust valve opens, the point of when the exhaust valve opens, that is critical to the sound. And then obviously the exhaust system design, that kind of thing. The intake manifold design, the symmetry or asymmetry, if you want to introduce some half-order noise, that is a lot of stuff that I'm really proud to have carried over. And then when I went to that company too, there was the whole combustion and performance. They were not quite up there to what I was used to. Yeah. I don't micromanage, but I brought a lot of my knowledge there, and I trained a lot. I imparted a lot of my knowledge to the guys. So those are some of the big ones, I think.
Okay, that's cool. As you're talking about noise and stuff. It's actually funny. I can hear an Alpha engine. I can literally sit and wait a minute, somebody started an Alpha engine, or somebody starts an XK6 straight 6 Jag engine in a...
I can too. I can,
because I got that specific tone.
But that's important. I mean, I would say that this whole MVH tranquility that really came on its own, I'd say, in the 2000s, and BMW and everyone put so much effort, and they want to make a signature noise, like you say, you know. Yeah. And Jag are the same. It's really important. When I get into a car now, like a rental car, I think I was in a Dodge Charger, a new one, and I immediately could tell they just made it quiet. The Japanese often, they'll just make it quiet, but the trick is to make the right noises that people find agreeable a bit louder and everything else quiet.
Yeah.
You know? So it's very interesting, I think.
Yeah, I love it as well. I mean, I often like to hear when an engine starts up, 'cause I like to know if it's got a unique signature to it, or if it's just another engine.
That's cool too. Like over here, I didn't grow up with muscle cars, but when I hear the muscle car guys talk, they're either Mopar, GM, or Ford.
Yes.
And they always say they can tell a Mopar when it starts because it has a reduction gear starter motor. I don't know what they mean. I know what they mean rationally, but I can't hear it because I didn't grow up over here.
Yes.
But they'd always say you can always tell a 70 Challenger because of the reduction gear starter motor.
Yeah.
So that kind of thing, you know. It's interesting.
It's like when I've also had a couple of Jags, and I had a very modified Series 3. And
wow.
I had the 3.8 heads on with the triple carbs and all that. And that triple carb setup when it at full tilt is so it sounds like like an old like Spitfire or a Harvard, if you want to call it. It's got that noise. It's just nothing. No other engine has it.
So was it triple SUs or triple Webers? What did you put on it?
SUs. I did the SUs.
Okay. So I have a last year or the year before I bought a Series 2 Jaguar E-Type 4.2.
Yeah.
A convertible, and it's got a stupid twin carb because of American regs.
Yes.
I spent a lot of money and I got the triple carbs. I haven't fitted them yet, but now you've whet my appetite. I'm gonna fit the triple carbs. Yeah, I'm looking forward to that sound.
Yeah, I mean obviously the Series 3 came with full injection and everything, but we changed it up and I put high compression pistons in, ported the heads,
nice
cams, straight through. Actually, had a straight through exhaust system.
Yeah. Wow.
So
the heads, the Series 3 heads are the best. You know that they're the best heads. Because the E-Type heads weren't as good. I think the Series 3 was there. So if I find a Series 3 engine, maybe I'll take the heads off. And I thought about building a secondary engine for my E-Type because I don't want to lose the originality. So I might make a secondary engine and put it in. You know.
Yeah. I loved it. It was extreme. I mean, you could do 250 k's no problem and kilometers an hour. And it didn't feel like it was being pushed. You know, some engines you can feel it at some speeds they're being pushed. You know, they're working hard. You know, and that engine didn't feel like it was working hard. So I would love to get a nice Series 3 and do something like that to it again. But now I've got the XJR, and that's also a lovely engine that doesn't stress at any speed really effectively.
Wow, the XK was a legendary engine. So it's funny because I got a friend here, and he's got a really old Oldsmobile, like a 71 Oldsmobile. He's into American stuff. And I like American stuff. I have a Challenger. Yeah. But sometimes in America, I want to be more British because it's kind of cool. It's kind of unique. And I'd love to get, an XJC. You know what an XJC is?
Yes.
Series 2?
Yes,
I'd love to get one of those. Yeah, and then put
now,
a Series
you know what?
1
I've got a friend here in Joburg who has one.
Yeah. I think they're gorgeous. I'd love to get one of those, and then I'd get the Jaguar V12. I'd stretch it to 7.3 litres. It would cost me a fortune. There's a company, Rob Beard, that does a massive crank, but it's a lot of money. And I don't know if I'd ever do this, but it's a fantasy. I'd make it into a manual, do a monster V12, mainly because Americans, they slag off the V12, and they're wrong. They always say the V12 is a terrible engine. It's not a terrible engine.
Isn't.
They overheat. If you don't change a coolant, the radiator silts up and it overheats. Well, if you don't look after them, but the Jag V12s are good. So I'd love to just make a monster V12 engine and show all these Chevy guys, look, this is how it should be done.
But also people don't realise that some of those engines were used in remember the cigarette boats? Those
yes, they were. Yeah.
And those are 1,000 horsepower boats. So.
And I looked at the bearing sizes on the V12, and they're so big. They're bigger than the Chevy and the Mopars. They're massive bearings. So you can make the engine bigger and you're fine, you know?
Yeah, I mean, that can be a nice engine, reliable 650 horses.
Yes.
You know, no
the biggest
problem.
challenge, it's open deck. So open deck isn't as good when you turbocharge. So you've got to think about how you're going to do that. But, you know, some nutbag in Australia, I can't believe those guys. They made a 24 valve. They made a 48 valve V12. They got the 6-cylinder head and they flipped it round. I don't know how the hell they did that.
There's a guy in England that you must look up called Swales, something Swales. I can't remember his. I actually had him in my shop. I forgot his first name. But he's bought his own V12.
Yeah.
On the base of the Jag V12. So it's called, I think, the Greater. I'm going to be probably slaughtered for this because I'm probably totally butchering his name here. But it's either Greta or no, I must rather not say, because I'm probably going to get slaughtered if he watches this. But he's done his own V12 engine, and it's phenomenal quad cam V12. But using the XK heads, I think I'm correct as well. So
I read about this. I read about it. Yeah.
Never swale.
Yeah.
And that engine.
And it's a Hemi. It's like a XK, isn't it?
Yes, yeah. It's phenomenal. And Mazia sounds like it's just awesome. And now I wish I had the money or something to have a car that could have that engine in.
It probably cost a fortune, wouldn't it? But it would be amazing.
Yeah. So
I wouldn't mind putting that into an XJC. And then in England there was a show called The Avengers.
Yes.
And John Steed had this. He had the big wide wheel arches. I'd love to do the wide wheel arches.
I actually have a personal opinion regarding the XJC. That's the Jag that should have just made straight from the start.
Yeah, maybe.
Not the 4-door, but just keep it 2-door.
I agree. I wouldn't mind the Series 1. I think the Series 1 front is the best front.
Yes,
so
I agree.
I don't think it would be very hard. Yeah.
And actually, Series 1
would be very hard to make it into a one.
Out of the three, I don't think it's as powerful as the Series 3, but it was more powerful than the Series 2, the Series 1. But it was also again to do with emissions and I think less emissions when it came out and stuff like that. But I've had a Series 1, I've had two Series 2, I've had a Series 3, 420G.
You were a real Jag guy, Jesus.
I've had a 420G and then the XJR6.
Did you like the XJR6? Did you like that, the 300?
It was okay. It's good. I mean, for its time, it was definitely phenomenal. But you know, coming into this, if I compare it to the X350, it's just it doesn't. It's probably got more classic. Probably now it would have probably more classic appeal than the X350. But from a driving, I prefer the X350 just from a driving perspective.
Which makes sense.
You know.
Which makes sense.
But still very good, very good car. Yeah, I think the whole whole XJR range specifically, I think was phenomenal.
I agree.
You know, and then you go further back, the XJ, like you said, the XJ S, the first XJS, I enjoy. And then the C types, the D types, the XK120s, 150s, 140. You know,
they're amazing.
So I'm a big. If I really had the money, I'll probably go for an SK120.
They go for a lot, don't they?
Yeah, just to have it say the SK120. But I'm a Jag guy. Some younger guys will look at me and just say, you know, you're crazy, you're nuts.
But I kind of like being nuts, you know. I like it that there's a load of JDM guys here, and respect to them, but I like that they think I'm nuts. It's cool. I am nuts. I'm cool. Yeah. I hands up. I am nuts. I'm eccentric.
But it's the same like when I go out in public with this XJR of mine. I mean, I can park next to a AMG 63, which has happened.
Yeah.
And people actually go around my car and and pay little attention to the AMG, because they've seen you get blasted on social media with how good these AMGs or BMWs are. I was at a car show where they literally took my car was standing there, and a whole lot of people were hanging around my car just because it was so different. I mean, no one had seen an XJR at the show. I had a lot of people come up to me and say, "Oh, my dad had one of these," and I'm like going,
they're unique.
Yeah.
They're just compared to, I agree. I don't see that I'm going to trade up. I mean, I like the 350, but I'm so invested in my 308. I'm going to still keep that.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like with my only X350, I'm so invested in that. I don't think I could go any other way, even if I wanted to. Really, effectively, I'm not going to sell it. You can, and I mean, and it is there's less of them on the road, and they are, I mean, the X300, the X308, and the X350 are all climbing up in price at the moment as well. So I've just got. We've just got, the people who have them or we've just bought them are, I think they're bottomed out, if you hear what I'm saying. And now the price, the values will just increase and increase. I don't think it'll be ever an E-type value, but it's not going to be like it is now. Like, you're not going to have to worry that in 8 years' time you're going to sell it for half its value.
So in America, they're worth nothing. 350s, X308s they're very cheap,
Yes.
And a lot of that's because people perpetuate these rumors. Oh, Jaguar's oil leak, and they break the rumors actually perpetuate the low prices. And maybe where you're at, the volumes are so low, there's not any around that drives the prices up.
Yeah, and it does. Australia, even in Europe, apparently the prices are quite high, and I think it's largely to the effect of, in some regions, that it's not seen. So you get this. I mean, even in England, you get like the scale where you can pick up, say, an X350 for $2,500, pounds.
Yeah.
And yet on the other scale, you go somewhere else, like let's say Europe, and you'll pick up one for 15,000 equivalent pounds. So you got this extreme sort of like
end of the scale. Yeah.
End of the scale.
In Europe, MOTs drive cars off the road as well, makes them rarer. And then in England they rust, and then the MOTs over here we don't have MOTs, so people just keep driving their cars.
Well, same with us. I mean, we can drive our cars. I mean, with wire, like hold together the wire. And
same here. It's the same here.
There's no restriction. There's no rules today. No, you can't do that, sir.
To me, it's a big attraction of a place. I've lived all over the US, and when I have a job, if I have a job lined up, then they're like, "Do you want to move here?" And then I look at all the rules. I'm like, "No, not if they have rules about cars and stuff." It's just the way it is,
Yeah. Well, listen, Rupak, it has been such a pleasure having you. I'm seeing we chatted for an hour and a half, dude.
No, it's fun.
It's definitely fun, and I like to get you on here again and just chat cars.
Yeah. It's been fun. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, I really, really enjoyed it, and very informative, and that's the kind of thing I like. Like it's like it gives me some thoughts as well myself in terms of the vehicle and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Cool. All right. Thanks, man.
Cheers, man.
Take care.
Bye. Yeah, take care. See ya. Bye.